Be strong.
As I mentioned earlier, many of our activities are governed by the laws of that particular country, right? So if as a student you have to follow certain things, as a faculty I have to follow certain things, etc. And this is actually getting more and more serious because something goes wrong, they will ask us all kinds of questions. Yeah. In fact, NUS had a few of those incidents in the past. Every organization has that kind of incident, right? So then that's when all these legal issues crop up. Yeah? Give an example. Let's say I do something in our lab, or my students does something in lab, and then the NUS do a unfair treatment or something. I don't know. I am very unhappy with NUS. If I call the the news and say, oh, this is what incident happened, and blah blah blah. Then if it comes in the news, then NUS can actually sue me or take action against me, right? Because I am not following the required protocol. So there are lots of protocols and regulations set up by the institution, set up by the country's government, and etc. etc. So Singapore is a city-state, right? So there is only one authority which makes those rules. But if you go to larger countries like China or India or US, they have regional rules as well, state rules versus the federal rules, etc. So we have to follow many of those things. But again, none of you usually break the rules, right? Because we are aware of common, and safety is a common sense, right? Therefore, as long as you follow the norm in your lab, then you're not breaking any rules per se, right? And that's something which I need to highlight in this one, right? Who follow these rules very carefully? WSHA. WSHA actually has to implement protocols, yeah? Because they will liaise with the ministry and they will liaise with the departments, yeah? And therefore, if the ministry has something, new policy comes up, laws comes up, they will tell the head of the department, okay, you have to follow this because it's a new guidelines and new this thing. So a lot of time, communication comes through that. Okay. So WSHA has a website where all this information about the laws and everything you can get from it. So use this website. Be aware of the legislation governing your activities. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. You cannot go to a court and say, I did not know, or I am not aware of that, right? That doesn't usually apply. Legal principle holding that a person who is unaware of the law may not escape liability. Yeah? You still are liable for your own action. So the Workplace Safety and Health Act, it's a huge document. It's not one-page or two-page document, right? The laws, when it's written, it's thousands of pages because it covers every aspect of it, right? So if you are really interested, you can download this through WSHA website. WSHA has a certain website and give you a list of laws applicable to NUS in general, not chemistry, but NUS in general. So you can actually get those things. And this is written by who? Who writes these kind of laws? Not minister, right? Who writes these laws? Not WSHA definitely, right? This is a state country law. Who writes those things? What's the process involved? Who? Yeah, Ministry of Manpower, but it's a building, right? But who actually writes? It's like who does research in the chemistry department, not Department of Chemistry, right? It's the students who does it, right? So there is what every Ministry of Manpower, Ministry of Law, Ministry of Home Affairs, they all have lawyers in, there is a team look at the, these kind of regulations which you need, okay? And it's not a one-day affair. They will not make a rules or regulation in one day, sitting down and have a meeting and say, tomorrow we'll change this. Absolutely not, right? Because it will affect many people, many things, and they have to be very careful when they develop. So these are written by legal people, right? Lawyers. What kind of language lawyers speak? Not our language, right? I don't know whether you have seen lawyers letters. They're kind of different English altogether. Trying to figure out what they are saying is always difficult, right? So these kind of documents are pretty hard to understand. So unless you are not getting sleep, if you have a sleeping problem, download one of these and start reading. You will definitely go to sleep, right? So that kind of, but it's good to know that the sources is available if you want to have a look. Yeah? So you can see the PDF version of it. And these are not 1 page or 2 pages, they're a huge document. And these are a bunch of list of things, laws governing, developed by the Singapore government, right? Applicable to NUS, that's what they put it there. And it's available from WSHA website. I give you the web address, right? So some of you probably want to read it and see whether what it says. Yeah. Safety and health legislation framework. Workplace Safety Act, key subsidiary legislation under this one, right? Key legislation related to the chemical management. Okay, so this is a whole process how they develop. I don't know whether it's important for us. Usually the law will start. When does the process start? When they start thinking about the law? How do the ministry knows that there is something missing? Remember, we just had, what was the latest one we had? The personal data protection thing. Why they came up with that?
Accident.
No. Personal data protection, there was no accident, but there was a problem. What was the problem?
Scam. Scam.
A scam is different. That's a financial thing, right? Personal data protection is something I cannot disclose all your email to somebody else. All your phone number to somebody else. Yeah, so there was, okay, when the law was, now there is a law, right? In Singapore, you cannot tell other people what is the phone number of so-and-so, right? For example, Singtel, who is the company, telephone company, cannot sell all the database to another marketing agent and say, oh, here is the phone number of all the people. They cannot do that. That's totally illegal in Singapore. Yeah? How does it, why do they make that law? And the other thing, I think it's something about internet. So you cannot go to internet and say, write a lot of information about other people. Yeah? That's also under personal data sheet. You cannot blame somebody else. You cannot write, say, I don't like you, therefore I create a story for you, right? False information. Misinformation, false information, that has been very popular in recent years. So in order to prevent that, government actually worked on it and then came up with this, so that at least in Singapore you cannot go and blame so-and-so, right? If you write, I don't know, maybe after I read your project report, I will see some people will say, this is totally waste of time. We spent 3 weeks in learning about safety. Right? Absolutely, I am not going to sue you, right? But it's okay, you can say that. But that's not the way it should be done, right? You need to understand what's the purpose, why you do it, etc., right? Because in the digital world, recent times, right? You can go to TikTok, or you can go to what is the other one, FB. You can say whatever you want, and that causes a lot of trouble, especially if it is related to the government policies. So there were a few cases in Singapore. I don't want to go through individual cases, but that created a lot of problems for the concerned authorities, right? If somebody go and say tomorrow that this particular thing is, this ministry is doing this and that ministry is doing that, they will have to investigate because it came from society, right? So what they do is that in case if there is an accident, there is such an issue in the society, as a whole, they will start thinking about how do we come up with, right? The problem they will identify, and then they read and debate, and and then asked by the president, somebody has to write it up and then debate that in the parliament, and then make modification. Because in the parliament, they actually, when they discuss it, it is written by a ministry, but covers everything. Then they will ask our other people to comment. Yeah? Is there anything practical? Did we miss anything? Or is it too harsh? Or is it too low? It's a whole long process. A law cannot be made in one day or 1 week or 1 month even. It takes sometime 1 year. I mean, Singapore is much faster than other countries, but it takes a few months to a year to pass, right? So parliaments usually do that, and eventually the president has to sign to make it law. All the laws are done, including our safety laws, are done through this channel only. Yeah, there is no exception. That's why another thing you need to know: the country's president cannot wake up to one day and say everybody should wear this kind of thing, or people should do this. No, he cannot decide anything, right? It has to go through the parliament, discussion, etc., etc. So that's a common process we do. Okay, so usually they call an act, right? Act of Parliament, and then you can have many subsidiary legislation. So the act is the common inherited, right? And then you can have more regulation, rules, orders, and under that notification, etc. Under that umbrella of an act. Workplace Safety Act is the one which started, and then you can have subsidiary regulation under the ministers and other keys and subsidiary legislation putting an act into practice. So why do we need all these kind of things? Because they are going to deal with many institutions. For example, even safety rules are, for institution like NUS is different from company, industry, right? Because we deal with a different aspect. For example, all of you guys are here on a scholarship, government scholarship, right? So you have a certain different protection than a regular employees, yeah? And then regular employees who go 9 to 5, they have certain strict, this thing. For example, they may close the whole institution by 6 o'clock. You cannot go after 6 to your lab, etc. But in NUS, you can work 6 o'clock. Nobody is going to close the door in NUS, right? So that these are all some exceptions given by these kind of subsidiaries. So this particular institution, this applies. The other particular institution, this applies. This group of people, this applies. And the other group, that applies, right? So everything has to be clarified, because you cannot take one stick and say this applies across, right? And that makes a lot of practical issues, practical problems. And that all taken into consideration when they design that. Okay? So safety and health legislation framework involves all these things, right? Starting from Workplace Safety Health Act and the Risk Management Regulation, Fire Safety Act. Then we have this Laboratories and Workplace concerning General Provisions, Petroleum Flammable Act, Environmental, Arms and Explosives Act. All these things applicable to our NUS as well, because we deal with all the different agents, different sections. Yeah? The Arms and Explosive Act is not the same as the Flammable Act, because the different agencies will be looking after that. Police, for example, looking at the Arms and Explosive Act. The fire department will be looking at the flammable thing. Environmental protection is looked up by another agency, NEA, for example, right? So these are subsidiary regulation which is specified to one issue of that under the same act. Okay, so it all started in up to 1973. It is not called Workplace Safety and Health Act. It is called Factories Act. Why Factories Act? Because that's the time where a lot of factories were working, and they only looked at that particular group of people. They did not look at a educational institution. They did not look at a research institute, etc. It didn't. Even research institute probably did not exist at that time, right? And that is have a different problems and different environment than the industries or factories which produce products. Yeah. So the up to 1973, this is only covered there. And then from 1973 to 2006, they started including other institutions in Singapore. Yeah, construction industries, education institutions, research institutes, etc., etc. Because it takes some time for them to implement and bring this group of people under that act, right? So 2006, the name changed to incorporate all the people working in Singapore, including our people work from home, right? Some people now do freelancing, right? And they are also covered under this, okay? But they are different from people working under the industry, right? But they have certain rules which to protect them. Like CPF, etc. Even freelancers have to contribute to the CPF. You cannot say, oh, no, I am not working for anybody, therefore I don't need to do this, etc. Many such issues related to that has to be incorporated into this. And there is also a lot of accidents at that time. See, for example, 2004 again was a bad year. Remember I showed you 2012 for NUS was a bad year. We had many major incidents. 2004 was bad in Singapore, right? Maybe there is something to do with I don't know, Chinese calendar. So I don't know. So 2004 there was a highway collapse, Nicole highway collapse, right? That was a major. It's not happened on every year. It only happened once in a while, right? But that was a major incident. We had a couple of fatalities there. Yeah? Nicole Highway, where is it? It's near the Suntec City, that area, right? Collapse of Fusionopolis. You know where Fusionopolis, right? There was a building collapse there in 2004. Fusionopolis is just across. The Biopolis and Fusionopolis, Hutchison region. Fire at Keppel Shipyard is another one happened, right? And then one Raffles construction site fell down. NUS had one incident where this big what is that called, crane fell down, right? And then during the business they were building the business building, business administration building. So there was a fatality there. So a lot of things can go wrong in the different places, and they have to be bringing the same under this kind of act. Otherwise, if we have to build make a law for each institution, it's going to be a nightmare, right? So they want to bring all these things into one place. So you can see the different type of Nicole Highway collapse. There were 4 people died. Fusionopolis 2, and then shipyard fire actually more people, right? Something like 7 people, and then this one is a Raffles Square one, right? 2 people died. So even the numbers may be small, but concerning Singapore, such a small state, even one death is actually too huge. Yeah, we should not have that kind of accidents and problems. So there has to be some change. Safety has to be brought on the front, and then reduce the risk source by requiring all stakeholders to eliminate and minimize the risk they create. So, because remember the cradle to grave kind of things, we talked about waste thing, right? So same here. How do we end up this one? Because somebody is doing something, right? And that has to be done in a safer way, so that everybody is protected. Not only the people involved in this, but also people near to it, people users that facility, etc., etc., right? So a lot of those things has to be done in a safer manner, so everybody is protected, right? Principle to prevent accident through higher penalties for poor safety and health management. So if we tell somebody, oh, do it safely, like we are telling you, right? go to a lab and do risk assessment, etc. But some of you will not even listen. Some of you probably watching YouTubes and whatever movies or reading newspaper. They don't listen. But tomorrow they will go to the lab and create an accident. What can we do? We don't just sit quiet and say, "Oh, that's his problem. He got injured because it's due to his action." And we don't do that. We actually go and investigate what happened in that case. If any one of you do something intentionally or without knowledge, without this thing, you will be punished. There are various ways to take that into consideration, right? So that's what it's principle to prevent such accidents through higher penalties. So they will impose penalties to the organization or people in charge, etc. And so if you don't do it, many accidents will keep happening. So what? Nothing going to happen. I don't have to follow this. I don't have to follow that, right? So therefore, government will put penalty into it to prevent other people to follow, not to repeat the same mistake, but follow the regulations. Greater industry ownership to the workplace safety and health outcomes. So industries by itself should take pride in saying that, okay, our workplace is very safe. Now I don't know whether if you go somewhere in Singapore, like there is a building and construction, they will say outside, so many days without any accident, so many days, we have zero accidents, zero emergencies, etc. That they actually take pride in that. They are doing safe work at their construction site, at their particular institution, right? So that is where, you really educate people to do things in a safer manner. Yeah, and this is important for a government who actually look after the entire society, entire people. They are not making distinction between chemical industry versus other industries, right? They are looking at globally, see what can go wrong, how to prevent. So it places responsibility of workplace safety on all stakeholders along along lines of control at the workplace, right? They don't actually leave, they don't say, "Oh, you're students, so you're just learning process, so you can do whatever you want." They don't say that. You're students and you're taught something and you must follow those kind of guidelines. And that is not the same for a faculty. Professors are much more responsible, right? So they have different rules and regulations, yeah? And then that goes to a head and dean, there is a different criteria altogether. They have to be even more responsible. Yeah? Then it focuses on WSH systems and outcomes rather than merely on compliance. Compliance means, okay, I am aware of it, so I will do minimum to meet the requirement. That's not enough. They actually focuses on more how do you respond to these kind of things, and is it actually you're doing something about it, or you just meet the compliances. So they can actually, there are various parameters to check on these kind of stuff, right? They do that. And then it facilitates effective enforcement through issuance of remedial orders. So if there is something happens, they will come up with different criteria to monitor why it happened, how it happened, etc., right? And they monitor the performance for a certain period to see did they improve or are they still in the same boat as earlier, right? And that's this kind of, they have manpower to do that, they will have mechanism to do that. And it imposed higher penalties for non-compliance and risky behavior. So if after it fails from all these three, it can actually charge institutions, right? So for example, let's say in chemistry, touch wood, nothing happened, but there are accidents every month, yeah? And then the ministry will come and say, ask questions, and because WSHA has to submit reports on every major incident, right? So if it is keep on going for 6 months, the ministry will be very upset. Yeah, ministry will say, why is it happening? What is your action to prevent this happening from NUS? If university just keep quiet and do nothing, then the ministry will come up with a fine. So they can fine huge amount, 500,000, million, depending on the issue, right? How serious the violation is. And the first time violation versus second time violation versus third time, the fine will go up. I will explain to you what that means. I think there's numbers somewhere. So there is a provision to impose penalties, yeah, and that's the way they can enforce this law. If there is no penalties, people just ignore. There are many countries it happens. I came from India. The enforcement is very poor, right? So many people do the thing and they get away with it, right? In Singapore, nothing of that sort happens. Yeah? If you do something, there's always a camera watching. You can't even say, I did not do it, right? They will come with evidence and say, oh, you were there, we can identify you, right? So therefore, you can not run away from it. So there are a lot of people involved also. That's also another important thing. You are not working alone. Yeah? You work in a lab, which is supposedly your professor is in charge. That lab is under the department, so the department head is in charge of the whole department. And then the department is under deanery. The dean will be responsible for it, and the faculty is under university. So university is responsible. So it's not just one person. Even when you make a mistake, the ministry don't come and ask you what you did, right? Ministry, where does it go? The people will ask you, the ministry people will ask the president what happened. And then the president will not have an answer for it, right? What is he going to do? He will ask the provost, right? He is below in the management system, right? Provost will ask who? The dean. The dean will ask the head will ask the professor will ask the reply. And even sometimes professor is on traveling conference trip, etc. He won't know. Then he has to come and ask you directly, right? So that is what I'm saying. So it's a chain of people involved. So it's not going to be a simple issue to handle. And every one of these people in the chain has a different role to play, responsibility to play. They cannot say, I don't know anything about it, I'm sitting somewhere on the campus. We cannot do that. Same goes for in industry. The CEO has to take the full responsibility of the industry, right? The CEO cannot say, oh, I don't know what this division is doing. I don't know what this production lab is doing, etc. They cannot say that. They have to take the full responsibility. We see this all the time, right? We see CEOs are responding to certain crises in the industry, etc. Okay, so principals are professors, employers, occupiers, manufacturers, owners, self-employed persons. All these people are involved. A person at work is like you, or somebody who actually do the work. The other people are all kind of managing the thing, right? Everybody is responsible, right? So they will have some role to play in this. So this is employers is a reasonable practice measures to ensure safety and health. So if you are a resident of the university, you have to have infrastructure to do things in a reasonably practical measures. That means it doesn't have to be ideal. Yeah, you cannot say everybody is working only in individual rooms and things like that. That may be ideal situation, but that is not practical, right? So therefore, it is okay to have a reasonably practical environment. His employees at work and persons not being his employee who may be affected by any undertaking carried out on by him in the workplace. So sometimes you are working in a society, right? So that's what I was talking about earlier, right? If you have a lot of exhaust fumes coming up and people are getting sick at the NUS and neighboring buildings, we are still responsible. Yeah, as long as we don't do it safely, they can make a penalty for us. Right? So the principles to take reasonably practical measures to ensure safety and health of any contractor engaged in any direct or indirect subcontractor. So this principal could be your professor or head of the department, right? This could be your president or provost, yeah, who actually provide the facilities and construct, right? So different levels, and they have different responsibilities as well. So contractor means, as I mentioned earlier, right? If you have an instrument in your lab, if somebody comes to fix that, the professor is in need to provide the PPEs and other things. Yeah? If something goes wrong, the professor will be in trouble. But if you are bringing somebody into the lab, you are responsible for that person's safety, right? For example, you cannot say, oh yeah, that instrument is, I don't use that instrument, but you let that person come in. You are the one reported this into, liaise with the company. Then you need to take care of that, right? You need to provide PPE, etc. And you also don't leave him alone and then go for lunch, right? If something happens in your absence, you'll still be liable for those. Yeah. So those are things we continue this next class tomorrow, right? But remember, these laws and regulations are quite important. So I think it's good to go through that quickly and learn a little bit about the book. So don't go yet. Let me take an attendance and then we can go. Let's see. Angel food? Angel food. Okay, listen. Let's do that quick attendance. If you listen to me, then we finish in few minutes, right?
All right.
Angel food? Angel is not here. So, Bao Hanya, Bao Hayoshi, and Kai In, Chen Song, Chen Suya, Chen Siku, Chen Sichuan, Clement Om Yuji, Dan Jiame, Dan Jiame, Fan Wei, Fus Siha, Gao Yili, Han Sanhui, He Hausian, Ho Chuan Yen, Hu Haibo, Hu Jin Hao, Ibrahim, Ji Chen Rui, Jian CG, Jian CG. Morning. Let's start so we can finish today if possible. Yeah? Okay. So this is where we stopped last class, right? Remember, we talked about obligations and who are the employees and employees, etc. Right? So this is basically university. Yeah? University means the management team, right? Including another department, your professor. They need to make sure that your working area is comfortable, safety is incorporated, etc., right? They have a responsibility. They cannot say, oh, here is your scholarship and you go and do PhD, don't come back to us until 4 years' time, right? They don't say that. They will actually provide you all the required safety tools and trainings and whatnot. Yeah, they have to not only provide you, they also have to demonstrate. If ministry people come and ask as a chemistry department, what do you do for safety? They have to give specific details, including the post we conduct, safety committee goals and activities, what they do every year. All these things, database have to be verifiable data they have to provide. Okay? So that's the responsibility. You cannot simply say, yeah, we know safety, we have been doing this, blah blah blah, right? But if they don't have data to verify, then it's difficult. So providing and maintaining the work environment which is safe without risk to the health, right? So anybody, whoever is working in the lab, we should make sure that the health is not compromised. Right? Ensuring adequate measures for any machinery, equipment, or articles of or process. So whenever you do something, use a machine, use a reaction, whatever, it has to be safe. Yeah, the process has to be dealt in a safe manner. You cannot again, let's say if you buy new equipment in your lab, right? It's not something you just have to go and operate by yourself, right? You must be provided training. If there is nobody trained in the lab, in the group, the instrument people will come and train you, right? So you must know how to use the machine in a safe manner. That is the responsibility of the professor, right? Occasionally, we have cases where you are undergone all the training, but then you go and damage the machine anyway, right? Because you forgot how to operate, you don't consult with your senior or other people, you make the problem, right? And then that boils down to your own responsibility, not the professor's responsibility. And so you need to make sure that there is a good environment where you can both say ensuring patients are not exposed to hazard arising out of this or their activities, right? So again, if one person is doing in the lab something dangerous, other people should know and take care of it. You cannot say, "Oh, this is that person's responsibility. I don't know what else happened to others," right? That's not possible. Everybody should be working under safe, developing and implementing procedure for dealing with emergency. So the lab has to have the mechanism to deal with emergencies. If they are dealing with the biological stuff, they need to have a biological safety measures there, right? If they are dealing with the explosive stuff, they must have a safety procedure for dealing with explosive stuff. So it all depends on what they work on, because a department by itself may not be able to look at everyday activities, right? So that's why the professor's responsibility is very important. Now, OSHA by itself, the OSHA by itself also look into those kind of scenarios where the people are. There's one here. So the OSHA also asks us to do it safely, because whenever we propose a project and we get funding, we have to submit all the details to OSHA and then they get approved. We have to get approval from them before we can actually do the project in the lab. Right? So there are a lot of check and balance we do, making sure that activities are done in a safe manner. Inspection, information, training, supervision, etc. should be provided. Adequate adequate instruction and training, etc. must be provided, right? So these are all responsibility of the employer or your professor or the department, right? Provide person not being his employees with the information on their safety to be affected by this. Not only his group, so let's say if you are doing something dangerous, but your neighbors also should know, right? Because that may also affect. Yeah. So there is a huge responsibility put on the group, research group, when they conduct research. It's not simply you can wake up and think about an idea and start doing it, right? You cannot do that because you have to be responsible people to handle those emergencies if it may come up. Then this is related to you, people who are actually doing stuff, right? Use any suitable appliance, protective clothing, equipment, etc. for securing safety or health and welfare. So you must be aware of your own safety, because nobody else can be 100% sure what you do, how you do it, etc. Right? So if you are not so sure, always seek help. And don't just go and do it and get into trouble. Cooperate with employer or your professor, etc., or principal to comply with the provisions of Workplace Safety and Health Act. Right? That is act is applicable to everybody. So you must also follow the same rules. Right? You cannot say, "Oh no, I just came 2 weeks ago. None of this applies to me." Or you cannot say, "I'm a super researcher. I published 5 papers in 1 year, so this doesn't apply to me." None of that matters. Nothing matters when it comes to safety, because it's not only your safety we are talking about, also other people working in the same lab, same floor, same building, etc. Not to willfully or recklessly misuse any appliance with protective clothing, equipment, etc. So if they find something you are doing very funny stuff in the lab, they can actually take action on you, right? I mean, department has the authority to let you go, right? Cancel your scholarship, etc., etc. So don't get into that kind of scenario. not endanger the safety or health himself or others. So that's the critical issue, right? You should take care of yourself. Also, your people in the lab and floor and building, etc. This is not something you have to babysit. You don't have to go and ask other people what do they do, or you don't have to tell everybody, hey, today I'm doing this reaction, that reaction. You have to follow the general safety guidelines, right? And if you think that something can go wrong, you inform people, work with people, and do it properly. Yeah? None of this is to prevent you from doing research, right? This is actually to make sure you work in a safe environment and other people also work in the safe environment, right? So nobody gets hurt. Yeah. So that's the reason. Some people never listen anything, right? There is always that group of people. And then how do the government come in? They have a different level of penalties, fine, etc. Right? So you can see individual persons with a repeated offense. Usually they give you one warning, when they find it. If you keep repeating, then they can actually charge you quite a bit, including imprisonment. Yeah? Because that's the only way to teach people. Only some people, right? Majority, 99% listen. 1% always don't listen and do something funny, right? And that's why they need these kind of penalties, right? Corporate body, for example, NUS is a corporate body, industry is a corporate body, right? So if they have a repeated offense, so same kind of incident keep happening on campus, then they can charge from 500,000 to 1 million. In fact, there were cases in Singapore, they would charge that kind of penalties, because they had repeated accidents, repeated that in their own campus. Not in NUS, but outside. Persons at work not using person protective equipment. This is very, very common, right? If you go to a lab, I'm sure somebody is not wearing safety goggles or lab coat, etc. Come up with all excuses, right? The safety committee can fine you $1,000. If it's a second time, third time they catch you. Yeah? Please don't get fined and lose money. So not cooperating with the employer or principal, comply with act, misuse, etc., then they can increase the fine. These are guidelines, right? If the safety committee thinks that you're really making trouble, they can actually increase the amount. No big deal, right? The guideline says that that is the kind of minimum you need to charge. So that it acts as a barrier for that you don't do it. All right? In fact, we had a very funny case where this is a few years ago. One of the research students always come with shorts and chapel into the lab, and many times supervisor kept on telling the student that don't come here, do it this way. Never listens, right? And then this supervisor, a couple of times, safety committee came into the lab and found that the student doing this, and one had eventually kicked out of the group and department. These kind of things do happen. You probably think that this never happened, etc. Right? Some students really don't listen. They may have different reasons. So that student reason was that she's too busy to take care of those kind of stuff, right? Because she has been working so hard on her project, blah blah blah, right? But that is not an excuse. Because if she does something, or if he does something, then everybody gets affected in that group, right? Not just that person. Right? We are not talking about your own safety, but also other people's safety. So you cannot compromise on this, right? So some of these things are, as I mentioned, there were cases they have implemented those policies, and in the future also there may be cases they will do that, right? Persons at work, and those who go to jail is either that person who break the safety law, or they can also jail the CEO of the company, because if he doesn't implement, if he doesn't listen, right, people can go to the jail as well. It's unnecessarily causing all kinds of problems, because he has to take a responsibility of the whole institution. Persons at work, it does anyway, negligent act which emerges and has the safety of himself or others, and also find. construction area. There are few cases of that kind of punishment given. Sometimes it's not practical for them to follow, and then when the safety officer comes, they will keep finding these kind of problems, right? Then the person who fails to comply with the remedial order. So if they ask you to fine and then they don't you don't pay, then again there is a multiple. They will increase from $1,000 to $50,000. They can go into higher punishment. Right? Singapore is very good in terms of enforcement. It's not just the law alone, right? They have a mechanism there. They will do that. A person who fails to comply with a stop work order can be. So stop work order usually like when you have an incident in the lab, and then OSHA will say let's close the lab and then fix this before you continue, right? And then we had some cases where lab was closed by the OSHA, but the student went back and tried to do some things inside it, right? So 2 days later, when they came, they said people are working in the lab, and that can be a very dangerous thing. So that's what we call not obeying the stop work order, right? Same thing happens in construction sites where there have been many stop work orders given to construction sites. But if the contractor comes and start working, they can actually take those kind of actions. Yeah, I mean it works both ways, right? Because these are tools available for the safety inspectors, right? Usually they try to work with you because they don't want the conflict. Yeah? And majority, as I said, 99% will listen, and they will try to work with the safety inspector not to get fined and blah blah blah, right? But the small percentage always go against it. They don't want to listen. Then they can enforce. So it is up to the safety inspector to make that judgment, right? If he or she finds that you're willing to work and willing to listen, they do not have to fine you, right? But here the safety inspector thinks that oh, this person is hopeless, not listening to whatever I say, or he's always going to go against the law. Then they can actually do make your life very miserable, right? So they have that all the options available. Yeah? And that is why it is important to follow the instructions. So as I mentioned earlier, the implementation of workplace safety and health act came in a different stages, right? 2006 it started, but it only dealt with the factories because that's when all these incidents were occurred, and the manufacturing, construction, those kind of things you will see those right? Including like airports and things like that. They were just building up this infrastructure, right? And then in 2008, the phase two actually started. Hotels, restaurants, veterinary, healthcare, logistics, waste management, landscape, all these different industries also brought in. Okay? Because of all these industries have employees and employers, right? And they can have different rules, different practices, different things, safety hazards, etc. What kind of safety hazard do you find in hotels and restaurants? Or veterinary institution, veterinary shops. What kind of safety hazard do you usually come across? Hotels, what is the safety hazard? So, all of you have stayed in a certain hotels at some point, right? Whether you're kids or this age. What kind of safety hazard do you usually come across in the hotels? Any
Emergency exit.
emergency exit? That's when you are going there, right? What kind of hazard you usually come across?
Burn, fire, explosion.
Yeah, but this is in fire if you're a smoker, right? Sometimes if you're a smoker, you can cause fire. But other than that, what you're in the premises or in the room, what kind of safety hazard can you come across? Lots of them.
Fire extinguisher.
You know, for example, your bedding, your your TV. If it is cables all over the place, it's a tripping over hazard, right? If your bed is so bad, you cannot sleep properly. It is a safety hazard. You can fall off and break down, right? The furniture provided is very shaky, things like that. That can be a safety hazard. The corridors is full of water. It could be, right? So these are kind of things where there will be injuries occur in the guest comes in the hotel. What about veterinary shops, like pet shops? But also employees, right? Employer and employee, right? Employer will be the owner of the shop. Employee will be the person who take care of these things. So what happens there? What kind of injuries the employee can go through? Pet shops? They will not in Singapore, right? What can happen? Yeah, rabies. So vaccination has to be done, right? Proper vaccination for the employee as well as the animals have to be done, and they have to keep a record of it. That is what they need to do. And that is provided by the employer, not an employee's expense, right? What does they need to do? They have to have a proper protection dealing with animals because animal bites are very common in a pet shop, right? Some dogs or cats can scratch or they don't listen, some etc. Right? So they need to have protective gloves, protective clothing, etc. when they are handling those. Now, employer can provide that, but employee decided not to wear, right? And sometimes that can also happen, because employer is not always sitting in the shop, right? Employee is the one dealing with, and he doesn't wear the gloves and then go and catches a cat and got scratched. What can happen? These are real scenarios which does happen in some of the shops, right? And then employee, if they get infected, etc., they has to go and see a doctor, medical bill will go up, and then they will complain, oh, I am not getting it, etc., right? Go to this ministry and complain. So what can employer do in that circumstances? Nothing. Is it? Employer has to show the how he trained the employee to handle the animal, right? There must be a record of training. There must be a record of providing PPEs for that employee, right? He has to show bills for purchasing this or have some video of training sessions conducted, some video of showing how to handle the animals. Those kind of evidence has to be provided by the employer, right? If employer cannot provide, then the ministry will say, oh, it's your fault, you did not train the employee, right? Then the employer will be asked to. So if the employer has provided, have a detailed record of these things, then employee has no choice. They have to spend their own money, right? Because it's a negligence of the employee. So it can work both ways, right? And always it goes by the data you say, data you can show, yeah, and third party will come and verify. Okay, you have done this. Okay, it looks good, and therefore you're not liable. Right? If you haven't done it, of course you are liable to. That's why it's very important to have those records kept. And then in September 2011, everything else is included, including education institutions. What can go wrong in education institutions like JCs, in universities? What kind of risk or safety hazards we have? What are those hazards? What happens if you are in a, I don't know, primary school? Again, you have to think along the kids coming into school. Do they have a safe place to learn and study, right? If your corridors are all watery and slippery, then they can be liable to the injuries caused to the student, right? If the student falls and get injured in the playground, again the school has to show that there is some supervision in the playground. It's not they go and do that. And smaller the age, more supervision they need to provide, right? JC probably they don't need to supervise the playground, right? Because they are kind of adults already, right? But then the JC probably have a different level of problems. For example, computer issue, some bullying over. These are very common these days in JCs, right? The one student bullying all the other students in the class over the Facebook page or this. So all these things are liable. The schools are liable, and they will provide you the training for all the classes before the class starts. They will give you handout. There will be somebody person responsible for this kind of training, right? And those are the kind of scenario they can set it up. And if a third party like people from MOM comes in, they can investigate, and the school has to provide the evidence. You cannot simply say, oh yeah, we thought about it, but we never did anything. Of course, then you will be liable, right? You have to actually have something happen. So they included everything. So currently, any work, including freelance work, right? Freelancing, many people do these days, working from home, also covered under this. Yeah. So in case if your actions are going to be causing a problem for others or society, you are liable for those. Yeah. That's very strict on. Vision Zero movement, global movement launched in World Congress on Safety and Health Work at 2017, right? Every accident is preventable. Commitment of every stakeholder, employers, workers, unions, they all have to be involved. Yeah? Because if one party is not involved, then there will be many problems. Many of these people are not sometimes difficult to work with. Right? Therefore, I think there is a homogenized movement. But if you look at other countries, union will never listen to the government. Union probably don't listen to their own workers. They have their own point of view, etc. Right? So sometimes that could be a conflict there is some. But when it comes to safety of the employees, everybody will work together because that's critical. That's why this kind of this I think the case here we already mentioned many times. UCLA case, right? So after that case, they have actually taken the professor to the court, and then I think he got away with a very light punishment. He did something like 800 hours of community work and $10,000 fine, right? But if the same scenario happened in NUS, what will happen? You know, in Singapore, if that happens. That should, if in one of your labs and somebody died because of this kind of incident, what's the difference? There is no way they will have their own. In fact, if there is a negligence on the officer's side or any where they can figure out especially fatality, they will have a strict, measures to take, and the supervisor will lose the job immediately. University say this is too difficult to handle. So supervisor will lose job. He will be fined, and whether he will be imprisoned depends on the scenario. Right? You have to go to jail and be a problem as well. But these are all depends on the individual cases, right? In fact, we had one case. I think only one case I know in chemistry where a supervisor was fined. That's because the student did something like a gas evolving reaction in a CO tube. It is not allowed to do that. Gas evolving means, during the reaction, carbon dioxide is eliminated. Right? That creates an undue pressure, and you need to take care of that. But unfortunately, the student did not take care of it, and then they found that the supervisor was not aware of the reaction, did not discuss, blah blah blah. Right? So the supervisor was fined. Student got injured, hospitalized, and did not lose the life or anything, but problem was there and the supervisor eventually left be associated with it. You didn't have to go to prison or anything because it was only on the. Okay. So these kind of things can, if it happen in Singapore, then there will be a lot of this meeting calls, etc. And they will try to find the university side or process side or the student side, then they will take action. So that's why all of you guys should listen to what Prof says. If it is something totally your own action, then Prof don't have to be responsible for it. You discuss with him and he did not instruct you or did not give you sufficient key subsidiary legislation. One is the Workplace Safety and Health Act. It's a risk management regulation, general provisions regulation, medical examination regulation, incident report. These all come under that act. So risk management we already talked about in the last class, right? This is compulsory and it's legally required, right? General provisions are usually applicable to purchasing chemicals, storage of chemicals, handling of the chemicals, or safety training. All those comes under the general provision. How we handle that safety in the institution, right? And there are strict regulations from the act as well. Medical examination, that's something also we briefly mentioned. If you are handling toxic materials, you should be given medical treatment or medical checkup. Yeah, and that the record must be kept. That's another important thing. Incident reporting, again, it's required by legally. So if something goes in your lab, you must go online and report it. It's not optional. In the risk management one, we already talked about this, right? Conduct risk assessment, control risk. There must be sufficient engineering control, administrative control, and all those hierarchical controls we must follow, right? Not only we follow, we have to demonstrate that we have followed these kind of things in the lab, right? And record keeping, at least 3 years, we have to keep the risk assessment. Right? And after 3 years, you do not have to throw, but you need to update it, right? And then keep another, make it as a new one and store it again. Communication, there should be a lot of communication via training or meeting, by email. Always there should be an open channel for discussing the safety, right? And review of risk assessment as and when there is a changes in your working environment, project, etc. So those are kind of things we do talk about in the then for the hazard challenges. So cartoon here, right? So what kind of hazards can you spot? There are many hazards there. What could be the any hazards? Yeah, tripping hazard. You can see those wires running across, right? So people can trip over, etc. Anything else happen? Blocking the emergency exit. So this is the exit there, right? And lots of things in front of it. Anything there? Any other?
Surplus of fire extinguishers.
Yeah. Some with the fire extinguisher.
Should not be in the door.
Where else can it be?
Close to the door.
Here? Yeah. Okay. So this can be, it cannot be left on the floor, right? Because when you leave the floor, it will keep moving in different places, right? It will shift. So usually it has to be attached to near the door. Yeah. Ideally, it should be the emergency exit door, or you can also near the any door, right? So that it is a place where you can escape. So it should be clamped or fixed to the wall so that it doesn't move. Right? If you put it like this, people will just move it with the convenience. Right? They can move it. What else is happening? Anything else?
The chairs that have any wheels to
Yeah.
take some books.
Okay, so this person is standing on a chair with the wheels, right? Remember we mentioned, right? So what happens when if she moves a little bit,
Can move.
the wheel will run by itself, right? Because of the chair will move because of the wheel, right? And that's why this is not good. Right?
The cupboard.
Yeah.
The cupboards with the above the head.
Yeah. So this person is doing something at the bottom, but then you can see two cabinets open at the top, right? So by forgetting what is on the head, you can get up and hit the head, right? So you have to be very careful when you do it. You have to push it inside before you start doing it. Why? This one? Yeah. This one? What's wrong with it? The tripping hazard, right? That's what we talk about. You should not be across or falling. But if you look at this particular plug, electrical plug, there is so many things connected to it, right? So it's kind of over usage of it. I don't know why the computer is connected there, the other one is connected, right? And then you look at this person. Is she safe? This is very common in our era, right? Now we don't have this kind of phone anymore, but when we had this, the people will just pick up and. So what is the hazard here? Follow, right? You can follow with those things, right? Second, if you are actually holding picking up heavy boxes, you must be careful as well. You don't pick up like this because it will be bad for your back pain, right? So, etc. So there are lots of things happening in this picture, right? And so you need to see many of those things should not be there. Yeah? Not be. So here also another picture for the hazard. There are lots of things happening. This is a kind of a lab picture, right? And you can see the planes are there, and the student is not wearing any open. Air can actually catch fire from the plane, right? And then many of them are not wearing the safety goggles or top coats and things like that. So you really need to think about, and housekeeping is so bad. There are so many things on the floor and on the bench, etc., etc. Right? So you need to make sure that these kind of things doesn't happen in your lab. Yeah. So do investigate those kind of pictures. And then, this is the General Provision Act, where we have all these administrative control, engineering control, all those things provided, right? SDS, permissible exposure limits, right? So, in the workplace, all the control measures are there so that employees are protected, right? And this for each industry, it varies what kind of things they need to do. Therefore, not only they have to do it, but also they have to demonstrate. Yeah? They have to keep a record. They have to say that, okay, these are things we have done. So in US, we have a lot of different controls. What kind of controls we have? In our chemistry department. We will only work on the inside the field board, no open bench thing, no open plane, chemicals have to be stored and segregated, and flammable content has to be flammable liquids have to be kept in the flammable cabinet, etc., etc. There are lots of regulations we have in the chemistry department to control these. Yeah? And THS is another symbol we usually follow. We already mentioned this about right? So you have symbols available to communicate with the hazards to other people as well. And these are different symbols. You must remember. Each symbol represents some of the hazards. And in fact, you can get these kind. I don't know whether it's to provide or not. You can get this kind of a sticker from the store, and then you can put it on your bottles and highlight what this. So, for example, if you take DCM from or THF from a big bottle to a small bottle, you should put a flammable symbol on it, right? Especially THF. Yeah? Or other symbols, what is on the label on the original bottle should be in the transferred bottle as well. Yeah? So, follow those things. So, these are already there in place. You just have to use the permissible exposure limits, semi-quantitative risk assessment, and industrial hygiene monitoring. Both are possible. So, for example, in your lab, you are using some mercury or cadmium or benzene, etc. You can actually ask for a medical examination, right? Therefore, they will do it before you use, and they will do it after 6 months. Yeah, other organs, etc. And hygiene monitoring, as I mentioned, is OC has a program where they will come and put different instruments in the lab and see the toxic gas concentration, this and that, etc. There are different programs available. So you just need to contact OSHA and they will come and monitor the air inside your lab. Yeah. Medical, these are some of the control substances. So if you're using any one of those things continuously, you can get medical checkup done. But do talk to your supervisor. Don't go to the USC and say, I need to do this, right? Then of course, they will do it for you, but you will have to pay for it. But if you go through your supervisor, there is a mechanism where department safety team will pay for it. Right? Some of them like arsenic, cadmium, etc. Again, one time is quite okay, but if you are using this consistently in your research for 6 months or 1 year, then you should definitely get follow the procedure. Yeah. So occupational health training, basement of university health center. There is a special training for those kind of things. So when you go and register, they will say you can approach the UHP front desk when you register directly to the. But there is a trained doctor and the facilities available. So make use of it. Incident reporting, more than 3 days MC, you definitely need to report to the Ministry of Manpower, not even the OSHA, right? Hospitalization more than 24 hours also need to be reported to the Ministry. Fatality, definitely, right? Hopefully we don't have any, we haven't had any so far. So hopefully we'll keep that record. Occupational disease is relatively new. That can be some allergy from chemicals and that lead to this kind of 3-day MC or hospitalization. Right? But then ergonomic disease is also coming up. So some people can complain, I've been working in NUS for 20 years and I've been suffering back pain because NUS doesn't give me perfect chair to sit on. Name it. There are lots of things can go wrong, but then NUS will have its own database to show that's not true. We have been helping the employees, blah blah blah, right? So occupational disease can be many things. Dangerous occurrence. So some things can happen. These are kind of things where if you find something, you can actually report to the. You yourself don't have to report. You can actually report to your professor if he doesn't listen. Talk to the head of the department of safety. They will do the rest of it. Or either they will find a solution for you, or they will report. Remember, all this reporting is not to penalize anybody, right? Because they won't take action. They won't just kick you out because you reported something, right? That's what usually people have here. So NUS or any institution should not do it. Legally, they can fire you because you reported a safety incident, you will have sufficient protection. They will come up with a solution for it. Any accident, you must report it in within 24 hours. Why is 24 hours is a critical period? Why not 48 hours? Why not 72? Why not whenever you feel like? Correct. You are still in that kind of shock or whatever you have come across, you can remember the incident more clearly. Different steps, what went wrong, etc., right? After 24 hours, after you sleep over and etc., you part of it will get you will forget about it. Then you will not. Second, as I mentioned earlier, whenever the incident happens, you are not supposed to clean it up, right? You need to preserve the scene of the incident, right? And therefore, the inspector come and report it. They will come and examine the particular. Yeah. That's the one to collect evidence and why it happened. Right. So that's why 24 hours is very critical. Because if you don't report it, somebody else will clean it up, all the evidences will be lost. They won't understand anything. So this is very important to follow that kind of guideline. We had few cases where the student did not report and then cleaned everything up, but then the safety officer come to know that, oh, there was this incident because somebody pulled the emergency shower and water was everywhere, etc. So when they hear from a secondary source, it becomes very difficult for you because they can find out what happened, etc. Right? And that is actually make it difficult for everybody to deal with it. But if you directly report being honest, then there will be much more easier to handle this. Can I claim my medical bills from work-related injury? This is another common thing happens, right? When you work in an industry. But in NUS, very seldom, I think you all have an insurance. So whatever happens to you, the insurance will take care of it, right? Then Work Injury Compensation Act, there is actually a provision there. So you can actually claim if you got injured during your work days, and then you can claim some of those. There is a provision there. Yeah, I do not know how efficient that is. How do we start? You can get there. We deal with lots of chemicals. What are the legislation we need? This is one of these things everybody handles on a daily basis, right? So we need to know what's the legislation associated. Chemicals are a lot of group of chemical, items, right? And they are covered in many acts. So not just one, right? So fire and safety, which is flammable, right? So fire and safety act is petroleum and flammable material regulations, and then environmental protection management, because some of the waste related to thing instead of dumping into the water, etc. And then arms and explosive act. So that means if explosive things are covered under that. Chemical Weapons or Prohibition Act. That means some of the chemical can be a weapon kind of thing, highly toxic or biological pathogens, etc., right? So those kind of things be covered under different agencies. Poison Act and Misuse of Drug Act, etc. So if you look at all these things, some of the chemicals have that property, yeah? And therefore different agencies are actually dealing with those acts, not just one agency, right? So if a fire, SCDF will come, right? Fire department will come. If it is a misuse of drug act, the narcotic and bureau will be the one coming up, right? Then HSA will do the poisonous act, etc. So why we have so many of these different agencies? Why can't one agency handle all these things? What's the reason? Must be a reason, right? Otherwise, why do they want to set up all different? They can send one person and say, "Oh, yeah, this is what happened," blah blah blah, write a report. Is that something happens? Why do we need so many agencies to handle the chemicals? It's something there because some additional things we need to talk about. Why different agencies come to investigate different aspects of chemicals? That's what I'm asking. Because if you look at each one of them, they are all totally different in properties. Yeah? The fire people does not know anything about poison thing or drug issue, right? They will only know how to deal with the fire, right? Same goes for the narcotic people does not know anything about fire, how to deal with the fire. They only know how the drugs actually impact on the human health and human life, right? So because of the expertise, different expertise required, they will put under different things. Now, these agencies are not just for NUS or NTU, right? These agencies work across Singapore. Yeah? So this narcotic people probably sitting in the airport as well, right? Or the, I don't know, checkpoint, gun checkpoints, and all these kind of places, because that's where this movement of drugs, etc., happens, right? So they will have that expertise required to deal with that particular issue. So that's why that many of these agencies are working to deal with this. So in our department, we have lots of flammable ones, right? So we keep them in a yellow cabinet with a flammable, right? Hazardous substance also we deal with a lot. Explosives we have the perchlorates that I mentioned, right? And things like that. Chemical weapons, usually not so much, but there are some compounds can be used to build chemical weapons. Chemical weapons are like explosives, right? Also comes under similar, right? And also very toxic ones like cyanide, for example. Right? Imagine somebody takes a bottle of potassium cyanide and put it in the reservoir or some water supply unit. Everybody will get affected, right? So people at some point they were really afraid of these kind of sabotage issues, right? That's why they want to control these things. Skill poisons also the same issue, control drug, etc. Lot of such issues come in, right? I mean, when we talk about control drugs, chemists really have a bad name. Why? Because in some, I mean, not in Singapore, but in say US or other countries where some chemists actually work on these kind of problems and make synthetic drugs and sell it to the market, right? And that is something you should never do. Yeah? Even if you are starving, don't get into that kind of drug synthesis, right? Because at the end of the day, that's not helping you. Bad for people, right? And you get punished. Nowadays, they can trace the chemicals. There are also storage requirements we follow, right? We talk about many. Some of those things that we will look into. Or access it, you have to write down the name, how much they take. Yeah. And then we have this product, so we identify from what kind of so we have a secondary to not have a chemical where all the chemicals we handle are actually fire, so they can fire. So here is agencies I mentioned earlier. All of them have to come in when we. Occasionally, we have police coming and checking our inventory. Our fire department comes very regular to the department and say, oh, what kind of flammables are you following up with the regulation? So that's where they say certain floors we can only have some amount of flammable material. So they will actually come and check. So how would I know which are the regulated ones? So when you are ordering some chemical, how would you get that information whether this is regulated or non-regulated? How do you find out that? Have you ever ordered any chemicals? And what happens? Let's say tomorrow you want to buy perchlorates for your oxidation or some project, right? Or you want to buy potassium cyanide, or you want to buy, I don't know, something highly flammable. So then there are check and balances. You cannot just go and order. What will happen? Try to order those chemicals through our chem store. Of course, everything has to go through the chem store, right? You cannot purchase by yourself. So what will happen? So NUS have actually set up something called ORME, right? Online regulated materials identifier. So when you put in that, you will get a message saying that, oh no, this cannot be purchased. There are forms to be filled out. So some of those checks are done online, some actually done by the secondary approval people. We have a multi-level of approvals, right? So when they check, they have a list by themselves and they check and tell you, hey, don't go order this and need it. Please fill up these extra forms. And even if it all goes to this approval in US happen and then ship you to the company also check because they are also liable if they bring something which is not permitted in Singapore, right? So they will come back and check and tell you, oh, no, this we cannot import or this we cannot sell. Yeah, we need additional forms to fill up, and then they will tell you. Yeah? So there is a few such check and balance we go through. Yeah? Can I just throw or pour solvent? We already discussed that. Not right. So environmental protection and sewage drainage act will take you to the court. License waste collection, as I said, there is always somebody comes and collects from our thing. Usually we have a industry. They have to be regulated. So what happens is that National Environment Agency regulates where the waste goes, how it is done, they control those. All over Singapore, not just anywhere. All over Singapore, what happens? So if the company comes and collects the waste, it has to be reported online. Our chem store, they will go online and say this much is collected from here and it will be other place. When they reach their destination, again they have to go to the NEA website and say that, oh, yeah, arrived there, this much is collected. Then they process it. Otherwise, you can have a whole truckload of waste. Instead of going to their company, they can go across Malaysia or somewhere, right? And you would not know where this waste actually gone. And you will be liable for those as well. If something goes wrong on the road, on the checkpoint, wherever it is, right? You will be liable because the waste is actually started from you. So that's what the government doesn't want to happen. No misuse of it. It has to be recorded from side to side. Yeah? So we also have this kind of labels on the to stick with. This is not the color we have. We have yellow labels and green labels, right? One for a chlorinated, other for non-chlorinated, and you can get this one from the store and then put it on your. How will this impact you? As I mentioned earlier, there are lots of things can go wrong. Okay, I think there is a quiz at 10 o'clock. So can you go to the canvas, log in, you do the quiz, and then take a break, and then we can. Yeah? Open the canvas. What's the name of that water? Purified water, recycled water. We used to call it as a new water. Yeah, but now I don't think you don't hear that word anymore. So usually that recycled water goes into the reservoir, not directly to the pump, right? I think some percentage is coming directly to our pipes, but most of it ends up in the reservoir, mixes with the natural water, and then come back. Yeah? Because our water purification system is so good, once it's purified, it has absolutely nothing other than water. Our drinking water should have some minerals, yeah, as a healthy composition. Right? But once the purification system becomes very efficient, it takes out everything from the water. So that's why they want to mix it with the reservoir water and then yeah, that's one thing. Second, there is also in the old days when they implemented new water, there is a phobia, right? That we are actually drinking our own wastewater, which is not true. But there is that kind of perception in the people's minds. So that's why they don't want to directly pump into that. And this is done mainly Singapore and Israel. Those two countries are very common, yeah, because they don't have a natural water. Therefore, they have to preserve the water resources. Other countries don't have an issue, so they don't recycle. How will this impact you? Obviously, when you put acetone and other chemicals into the water, some of the purification system will not remove everything, yeah, because they don't have that capability, and therefore some chemicals may come back to you. Yeah, what we need to avoid, and they are doing their best, but uh, new chemicals, there are thousands of chemicals we put down, right? And therefore, they may not all get eliminated, right? So please try not to put anything down the drain. WSHA student portal, I don't know whether you have been to WSHA website. There is a, WSHA has different portals. So when I go there, I'll see a different version than because different options available. So please visit the WSHA website and have a look through different factors and they have numbers there, safety and security actually gives you a lot of forms, a lot of documentation, etc. And they keep updating that because that's their main job, right? So they do, you will get those. And these are a couple of websites which you probably want to look at as well. OMI is something which is a controlled substance. So if you want to verify this is controlled or not, you can go and look at it. AMC is the one where you actually do the online reporting, yeah, where you can find NUS legal registry is the one where they compile all the laws applicable to NUS. Yeah. Then you can get the full copy and you can download through. Especially as I mentioned earlier, if you have sleeping disorder, this is a good thing to guarantee. Because some of the law documents are so complicated and trying to understand. It's not like our literature paper, right? But go ahead and read it, then you can learn. Now, there is a new thing came up instead of monitoring online. I haven't seen around, but this is something they already have implemented where you can do a QR code scan, right? And then you can report. They say anonymous, but you sometimes they're worried about people are not going to report if they have to be acknowledged their name, etc. Right? Making it anonymous it's easier to report. But then again, there are complications, right? Truly want to be anonymous, then they don't know where the incident happened. So you really need to give them the location, etc. Otherwise, they will not be able to track it down, right? So you try out and see whether, in case of incident, make sure you report. Yeah, don't hide. And this I already talked last class. This is the kind of looking at yearly report case, right? And this is a very good information for OSHI because they want to know what kind of things go wrong in chemistry department. And if there are consistent like certain cut by the even the numbers are very low. How it spikes on certain months, they will start looking into this. Just a statistical purpose and then bringing up remedial solutions. What improvements will you make in this kind of scenario? These are actually photos from our lab. What is this
labeling.
Label, right? If many of them don't, all of them don't have label. So what else is the problem?
I don't know. The chemical inside.
What is the problem here?
Finish. The label is not using English.
The label is not an NUS label, and plus whatever is written there is in internet thing, right? Nobody, most of you probably read. I cannot read, right? So even safety officers sometimes are not able to read. So please do not use any other language other than English. Okay. In some of you probably want to use it, but use both language. You write in English, and below it you can write in your national language. Okay, right? But English is a must. So label properly, right? And what is wrong with these two images? Again, it's from chemistry department only.
Do not put chemical in fume hoods.
What is wrong with this one?
Do not put any bottles or chemicals in fume hoods.
Yes. So this fume hood is used as a storage space, right? It's a waste of resources, right? What is the fume hood function? To do reactions and process inside, because that's where the protection is given. Have a windows, etc. But this particular lab seems to use it for storage, so it's not allowed. Yeah. Where should they keep this one? In a proper storage cabinet. Yeah. What is wrong with this one? The storage, please.
Mixturing solid and liquid.
There are
Too many
solids and
chemicals.
liquids present in the same container, which is not allowed, right? What else is wrong?
Near the 8. Near the 8.
You don't need a label for this one, but you definitely need label for that. We don't know whether it's that. But what is also missing is you see the bottle standing there. You are not allowed to put bottles on a sidewise. Yeah, it has to always stand up with the cap on top, right? Why? Because if you put it like this, there are chances of spillage and all kinds of problem will come. Yeah? And especially when you put a one on top of it, you can even have multiple problems, because if you spill, it will go into the bottom chemical, and it will may cause unnecessarily reactions and explosion, etc. Right? So never put a bottle on top of another one. All bottles, wherever you put, they always cap up, right? Upright, not on the side or anything. Right? Space is a big issue, but the best way to handle that is release or discard some of those used chemicals, not which you don't use, right? Don't accumulate so much. So, again, in a chemistry lab, right? Problem here?
The bench is very full with chemicals. The bench very full with chemicals.
Yes. There's absolutely no housekeeping, right? Because they just keep dumping bottles after bottles and bottles, right? No way to work for, and there is so much liquid there, whether it's a aqueous phase or organic phase, right? So when you have whatever the liquids you keep, whether it's a water base or you must have a secondary container so that leak can be. So none of this has any secondary container. All bottles are just sitting right. Now what is wrong with this one?
Oh,
Is there anything wrong with it?
of course.
Can I get some help from the backspaces? What is wrong with this photo? The first one. Photo this one. Let's see. Because I can't raise this thing now, right? This particular photo. You don't have the lecture notes on your desktop. Lecture note, it's in the canvas, right? Oh. Okay. Then I will go back and look at it. These are different photos. I don't know why the whole file. Okay. I will have a look. So what is happening here? And what is wrong with this one? This one has a lot of, you know, these are actually dangerous, right? People when they walk, they will hit on the back side. There are things on the floor. These should not be on the floor. It should be, if it is a waste, it should be in the waste bin. If it is something reusable, they should be put on the bench. Yeah. So that's another. What is wrong with these ones? These pictures. You guys cannot see the screen. You cannot see the screen. Ah, yeah. Um, what is wrong with these ones? These ones are they safe? Are there some safety violation? What is wrong? Okay, so look at this one, right? That's actually something I don't know what it is. It's like shoelace or something. You're not allowed to use any of those things. It has to be a metal chain. Right? Why? Because the metal is the most safer one. Because this can be heavy, right? And those string can get damaged and break, and then it falls off, right? Metal usually metal is much more sturdy, much better for something, right? So that's one of those. And look at those cables running across in front of them, right? You're not allowed to have any cables running across the walkway or corridor, right? You can, these are all dangers. You will slip and fall or get caught in that, have a accident waiting to happen, right? And this one, again, the same thing, right? Look at the chain. They have a metal chain, but what's the purpose of having that chain over there? It's at the bottom, right? It should be at the middle of the cylinder, not anywhere else. Yeah. So it should have it. This is at the right place, but they don't have the right chain. This is the wrong place, but they have the right chain. Okay. So it should be in the middle somewhere. There. Yeah. And then again, this is not the right place to put the cylinder either, because if somebody has to go through this one, it's nightmare, right? There is a walkway or something behind that as well. So you're blocking that particular walkway. So you should not be putting something like that. Okay, there are some case studies, different things. Is this in the lecture note? Right? Is this in the lecture note? No. Really? But how come you guys never mentioned anything about it? I thought I did upload the lecture note. Legislation that it's not there.
Yeah. Maybe you have deleted yesterday. You uploaded, but currently not appears.
No, I uploaded a few days ago.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
even
yeah.
yesterday.
I found it, but currently I open it. There is no.
Okay.
Yesterday it's
I'll
appears.
definitely upload today. Okay, so you can actually go through it. Okay, you must go. If you cannot find it, you should let me know. My thinking is that I already uploaded there, so that's why I haven't done it. Right? Usually before the lecture I upload. I don't wait for the lecture to happen. But nobody actually informed me because we started yesterday itself, right?
Maybe if someone downloaded yesterday, we can get it, but currently it disappears.
Okay. Anyway, today I will definitely upload. Okay. So again, be active, guys. If you don't find it, just drop me an email. That's not a big deal, right? Or tell me during the lecture that it's not there. I can upload it. Okay. So these are different cases where in this particular case, one of those employee got caught in this machine and then lost their life. What is the other one? So if that kind of incident happened in NUS or Singapore, you will have a very strict regulation coming up, right? And there is no excuse. We cannot try use any excuse in this. So there will be legal backing up that both the employee as well as the employer has to demonstrate they have done proper precautions and etc. Proper PPE all these things have to be. Otherwise, you can go to jail, right? For those purposes. So this is something which is very